We're all called to be great saints. Faith will be replaced by vision. You will see God. Hope will be replaced by knowing God. You'll never have to wonder. And love shall go on, because we shall possess God. And that's why St. Paul said, of these three, faith and hope, love is the greatest. Why? Because in heaven, faith will fall away and hope will fall away, because you are totally possessed by God. Now, these three gifts our soul will enjoy. I'm talking about soul now. Remember, this whole thing is on soul and body in heaven. Now we've talked about the soul. But the soul is not complete without the body. And the body is nothing but rigor mortis without the soul. But you're not going to be a full, entire person until body and soul are together. We will enjoy, the soul will enjoy, until the general resurrection. The general resurrection. General resurrection. When they'll be made one again. I want you to look at Philippians, if you can get your book up here. And if I can find my marker, it's going to be tricky. I want you to look at Philippians, 3rd chapter, 20. St. Paul says, our homeland is in heaven. And from heaven comes the Savior we are waiting for. Now listen to this. He will transfigure these wretched bodies of ours into copies of his own glorious body. And he will do that by the same power with which he subdues the whole universe. Ooh, isn't that wonderful? Now, I know what some of you are thinking right now. I had a brother-in-law that got drowned at sea. The sharks ate him up. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about all the deformities we've had and the lack of sight or hearing or a lack of ability to walk or run and all the diseases and all the disfigurements that visited upon us in our poor human nature, our age and wrinkles. Forget it. Why? Because the real you, the most perfect you, is in the mind of God. And you shall rise again. This body, be it ever so corrupt in years to come, this body shall rise again. Let's look at Corinthians 15. Let's see, 15. Whoops. I think it's 1 Corinthians 15:52. If I can hide 15:52. Okay? Now look at this. Oh, this is great. It said, there will be an instantaneous and a twinkling of an eye. When the last trumpet blows, it will sound, and you hear that trumpet blowing, and the dead will be raised. Imperishable, and we shall be changed as well. You say, well, I don't want to be changed. Did you ever see a picture of yourself when you were 10 years old? 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, you changed. And the person that only saw you when you were 6 would never recognize you at 60. But you're the same person. And so at the general resurrection, that perfect you will be there. And he says, it will sound. And because our present perishable nature must put on imperishability, and our mortal nature immortality. I like that. Now let's look and see what's going to happen to this body. What happened to the resurrected body of Jesus? I mean, the only way you can say anything about heaven is to look in the scriptures. Well, okay, let's look at the scriptures. And what are we going to find? Well, I cannot have or possess anything more than Jesus had or possessed after his resurrection. The first thing we see about Jesus after the resurrection was light. Light. The first quality of the resurrected body, and I'm not talking about his body, I'm talking about your resurrected body and my resurrected body. The first quality it will receive is light. Why? You will be as luminous as the sun. And Jesus manifested this quality even before his resurrection on Mount Tabor. Do you remember the transfiguration? You say, well, how did he do that? Well, don't forget now, we're talking about God. And being so perfect and having his soul, his human soul, in such perfect cooperation, harmony with the body, he had the many of these powers. But you and I will be transfigured. And the apostles looked up and they saw white as snow. It was so brilliant light. It took on a degree of brightness. Now, this light, you see, will be in degrees. We're not going to all look as bright as someone else. Star differs from star. Galaxy from galaxy. Planet from planet. So, how are you, or why are you going to look different? Why is your brightness going to be different than anyone else's brightness? Huh? Oh, I'm going to tell you. The amount of love you had for God when you died. That was the secret of the first Christians. Do you want to know why they would walk into these arenas and be crucified? Do you want to know why they had the guts and the courage and the stamina and the zeal to do all of those things for a newfound religion? Because they knew the resurrected God man. And they knew that when they died, no matter how horribly they died, they were going to get the same thing. And it was going to depend on how much their will was united to the will of God. We call that love. Do you want to know how much you love God? How quickly do you accomplish his will? You say, well, I don't do it too hot. Well, at least you know it. You can begin right now. We can see a little bit about this glory of the Lord's body if we look at St. James. Do you remember when Stephen? Do you remember when St. Stephen was being stoned? And he looked up, and there the sky opened up, and suddenly he saw this brightness, and he saw the Son on the right hand of the Father. Do you remember when Paul was knocked off his horse? What happened to Paul? He saw this tremendous light, this tremendous brightness, and it literally knocked him off his horse. He was blinded by it. So you and I will, our first quality of our resurrected body will be light. And it will be in degrees. Do you realize now how precious suffering is? How precious heartaches are. How precious are the things that go against us, that make us turn our will and unite our will to the will of God. Once you realize that, the problem of life is almost solved. Because you got this goal in mind, to love much. If you're going to love, my friends, love much. Now, the second quality that your body is going to have at the resurrection is it will be incorrupt. Incorrupt. Never decay. Never have a disease. Never have an ache. Never have a pain. No headaches. No indigestion. I mean, like nothing. It's going to live forever. Do you see, when we talk about incorrupt, this is very difficult. Very difficult to us understand that in something incorrupt. You cut your finger and you're not careful, you get infection.